Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this. How often have you found yourself listening to a man's words, wondering, what does he really mean by that? It's a question that plagues us all. And in a world full of nuance, hidden meaning, and subtext, men often speak in a way that can leave women confused, uncertain, and searching for answers. When a man says, "I'm not looking for anything serious right now," it might sound like a clear and honest statement. He is telling you in no uncertain terms that he is not interested in a committed relationship. Many people take this at face value and assume the conversation ends there, but the reality is often more complicated. This phrase is not always a definitive rejection, rather it is frequently a strategic move away to keep options open while avoiding immediate accountability. To fully understand what's being communicated, consider the underlying motivations. A man who is completely disinterested will rarely feel the need to clarify his position in such a way. He will simply move on. But when a man explicitly states that he doesn't want anything serious, he is still invested enough in the interaction to make that distinction. Why? Because he does want you, just not in a way that requires emotional risk or long-term commitment. This is an important nuance. He is interested in maintaining your presence in his life, whether as a casual partner, an emotional support system, or simply someone who boosts his confidence. This phrase is also a subtle test. He is gauging your reaction, watching to see if you will accept the terms he is setting. If you agree to continue seeing him despite his hesitation about commitment, he now understands that he can enjoy the benefits of your company without the expectations of exclusivity or deeper emotional involvement. This is not always a manipulative tactic. In many cases, it stems from uncertainty. He may genuinely be unsure about what he wants, struggling with past experiences, or even dealing with personal insecurities that prevent him from making a firm decision. The crucial takeaway here is that a man's hesitation is not necessarily a lack of attraction or affection. It is a reflection of his internal conflict. The key is recognizing that when someone tells you they do not want anything serious, you must believe them. It is not your role to convince or wait for them to change their mind. Instead, it is a signal for you to decide what you want. If you seek something meaningful and committed, you must acknowledge that staying in this dynamic could lead to frustration and heartbreak. Understanding this phrase is about reclaiming your own power, recognizing when a man's uncertainty does not need to become your burden, and making choices that align with your own emotional well-being. When a man says, "I care about you, but I'm just not ready," it can be one of the most frustrating and emotionally conflicting statements to hear. On the surface, it seems like a deeply considerate and honest admission. He is acknowledging his feelings for you, which suggests that his affection is real. But at the same time, he is setting a boundary, one that places the relationship in limbo. This phrase leaves you in a difficult position because it implies that he could want something serious in the future, just not at this moment. The key to understanding this statement lies in recognizing that it is often more about him than it is about you. When a man expresses that he isn't ready, it can mean several things. It might be a genuine reflection of personal struggles. He could be dealing with unresolved trauma, career pressures, or emotional baggage that makes commitment feel overwhelming. In these cases, he likely does care for you, but his internal battles prevent him from fully investing in the relationship. However, it can also be an indirect way of maintaining control. By telling you that he isn't ready while still affirming his feelings, he keeps the door open without having to take immediate action. It allows him to experience the connection, the warmth, and the intimacy without the responsibility that comes with true commitment. This statement also serves as a test. He is watching to see if you will be patient, if you will wait for him to be ready. And the hard truth is that, more often than not, people make time and space for what they truly want. If he were absolutely certain about you, his actions would reflect that certainty. Readiness is not always about external circumstances, it is often about priorities. If a man tells you that he isn't ready, you must ask yourself how long you are willing to stay in a relationship that may never progress. Are you willing to be in a state of emotional suspension, hoping that one day he will decide to commit fully? Or do you recognize that his uncertainty is not a reflection of your worth, but rather his own hesitations and fears? Understanding this phrase requires emotional clarity. It is not necessarily a rejection, but it is also not an invitation to wait indefinitely. The most important thing you can do is to take his words at face value and make a decision that prioritizes your own emotional well-being. When a man says, "I don't need anything from you right now," it might sound like an assertion of independence, but in reality it often carries a much deeper meaning. At first glance, this phrase suggests self-sufficiency. He is communicating that he doesn't want to burden you, that he is handling things on his own. However, beneath the surface, this statement can be a test, a subtle way of gauging what you are willing to offer without being explicitly asked. Men, like all people, crave support, loyalty, and care, but some prefer to receive these things in an unspoken way. By saying he doesn't need anything, he is observing whether you will still step in, whether you will offer your time, your energy, and your emotional support without prompting. In some cases, this is an unconscious behavior rooted in the desire to see if you are the kind of person who will be there for him without him having to make demands. He may be testing your willingness to nurture the relationship in a way that feels natural rather than transactional. On a psychological level, this phrase can also be a defense mechanism. Many men struggle with vulnerability, and admitting that they need help or emotional reassurance can feel uncomfortable. By stating that he doesn't need anything, he is protecting himself from the possibility of rejection or disappointment. If he convinces himself that he doesn't need your support, then he doesn't have to fear the possibility that you won't offer it. This can create a dynamic where he silently hopes for your care but outwardly pretends that he can manage without it. This phrase can also signal a reluctance to appear dependent. In some cases, a man who says this is emphasizing his own sense of control. He doesn't want to appear weak, nor does he want to feel as though he owes you anything. He may be setting boundaries, intentionally or not, that keep you at a safe emotional distance. The key to understanding this phrase is to recognize whether it is an authentic declaration of independence or a hidden call for support. If you find yourself in this situation, the best response is to respect his words while also observing his actions. If he truly doesn't need anything from you, then he will be consistent in that behavior. But if he continues to rely on you emotionally while insisting he doesn't, it may be time to consider whether he is creating an emotional imbalance, one where he benefits from your presence without acknowledging the depth of the connection. When a man says, "I just want to keep things casual," it might sound like a straightforward statement, but in reality, it is often layered with meaning. On the surface, he is making it clear that he does not want a serious commitment. Many people take this as a definitive boundary, assuming that he is simply looking for something light and temporary. However, this phrase can sometimes be a strategic way of maintaining control over the relationship while keeping emotional attachment at a distance. One of the most important things to recognize about this statement is that it is not always about the other person. It is about his own hesitations, fears, or desire for freedom. He may genuinely enjoy your company, feel a strong attraction to you, and even care about you deeply, but he does not want the responsibilities that come with a committed relationship. Instead, he wants to experience the benefits of closeness, intimacy, and companionship while avoiding the expectations that naturally arise in deeper emotional connections. Sometimes this phrase is a test. By setting the tone early on, he is gauging how you will respond. If you agree to a casual dynamic despite wanting something more, he learns that he can dictate the terms of the relationship. This can lead to an imbalance where one person is emotionally invested while the other remains detached, knowing they have the upper hand. The key question to ask yourself in this situation is whether this arrangement aligns with your own needs and desires. If you're looking for something serious, hoping that his feelings will evolve over time, you may be setting yourself up for disappointment. In other cases, this phrase is a form of self-protection. Some men have been hurt in the past, have unresolved emotional wounds, or fear losing their independence. By keeping things casual, they feel safer, believing they can avoid the pain of vulnerability or potential heartbreak. However, this often leads to confusion and frustration for the other person involved, who may sense a deeper connection, but feel unable to move forward. The most important thing to remember is that when someone tells you they want to keep things casual, you should believe them. Hoping for change or waiting for deeper commitment rarely leads to a satisfying outcome. Instead, focus on what you want and whether this arrangement genuinely works for you. If it doesn't, then it may be time to step back and invest in a relationship that aligns with your emotional needs and long-term goals. When a man says, "I don't want to hurt you," it may seem like an expression of care and concern, but beneath the surface, it often signals internal conflict. On the one hand, he is acknowledging that he values you enough to be mindful of your feelings. On the other hand, he is subtly warning you that despite his affection, he is not in a position to give you what you may be hoping for. This phrase is not always as selfless as it sounds. It is often a preemptive excuse for behavior that might lead to emotional pain. At its core, this statement suggests an awareness of an imbalance. He recognizes that you may be more emotionally invested than he is, or that your expectations for the relationship may not align with his. Rather than addressing this directly, he chooses a softer approach, one that positions him as considerate rather than avoidant. This allows him to maintain his connection with you while also creating a buffer that absolves him of responsibility should things eventually go wrong. If you end up feeling hurt, he can point back to this moment and say, "I told you I didn't want to hurt you." In this way, the phrase serves as a way to manage his own guilt, rather than a true attempt to protect your feelings. Another important aspect of this statement is that it reflects uncertainty. He likely feels a pull toward you. He enjoys your presence, your energy and companionship, but something is holding him back. That hesitation may stem from emotional baggage, fear of commitment, or simply an unwillingness to invest at a deeper level. Instead of making a firm decision, he chooses to remain in a gray area where he can keep you close without fully stepping into a committed role. The real question to consider when you hear these words is whether you are willing to accept the uncertainty they imply. If a man truly does not want to hurt you, his actions will reflect that through clarity, honesty, and consistency. Words alone are not enough. If you find yourself in a situation where someone is warning you of potential pain, it may be a sign to take a step back and assess whether staying in the relationship is in your best interest. Instead of waiting for him to figure things out, recognize that your own emotional well-being should be the priority and choose a path that aligns with what you truly deserve. When a man says, "I'm just figuring things out," it may sound like an honest admission of uncertainty, but beneath this phrase lies a deeper reality. At face value, he is expressing that he is in a state of transition, perhaps in his career, his emotions, or his life in general. He is telling you that he doesn't have all the answers yet, that he is still searching for clarity. However, this statement is also a way to avoid making a definitive decision about the relationship while keeping you emotionally engaged. This phrase often signals hesitation. He likely feels a connection with you but is unsure whether he wants to fully commit. Instead of making a firm choice, either stepping forward into something serious or stepping back entirely, he keeps things in a vague middle ground. By saying he is figuring things out, he is buying time, allowing himself the flexibility to explore his options without cutting ties completely. In doing so, he places the responsibility on himself rather than on you, which makes it harder for you to push for clarity. If you ask where things are headed, he can respond with, "I told you I'm still figuring things out." This effectively keeps expectations at bay while still keeping you close enough to provide him with emotional support. For many men, uncertainty is not necessarily a sign of a lack of interest. It is often a reflection of internal conflict. He may be weighing his readiness for commitment against his desire for freedom. He may feel drawn to you but worry about the implications of a serious relationship. In some cases, he may genuinely be unsure about what he wants, but in others, he already knows the answer and is simply avoiding the discomfort of admitting it. Either way, the result is the same. You are left waiting while he sorts through his emotions at his own pace. The key to understanding this phrase is recognizing that uncertainty itself is a decision. If a man is truly interested in building something meaningful, he will not need prolonged periods of ambiguity to figure it out. If you find yourself in a situation where someone is still undecided about you, the question becomes whether you are willing to wait or whether you deserve someone who already knows. Instead of focusing on whether he will eventually be ready, consider what you need from a relationship and whether this dynamic aligns with your own emotional well-being.